This is my 2024 model NuCanoe Unlimited kayak. I will tell you how I rigged it and the reasons I rigged it the ways that I did rig it, and maybe this will help you when you rig out your next kayak. I'll be doing this video while I'm out on the lake today doing a little fishing. Today's going to be an on-the-water video of how I rigged my 2024 NuCanoe kayak. I have my live scope pole hooked up here on Kayak mounts. I have two Kayak mounts. Each one of them is attached with a separate screw. But the reason why I put two on there instead of one, I leave this on here all the time going down the road. So if one of them was to ever get loose and my live scope pole fell off, it would not be dragging and damage it going down the road. So I put two on there only for safety precautions. Like I say, you really don't need them, but I'd rather be safe than sorry. On the bow of my kayak is a 45-pound thrust NuCanoe pinpoint GPS trolling motor. I decided to go with a I decided to go with a 45-pound thrust instead of a 55 because you gain very little to no additional speed with a 55. And the way that I know that is, first of all, I've heard several people talk about it on the YouTube, and I tried it myself on my other kayak. And my other kayak was a 2011 model Hobie Outback. On that Hobie Outback, I first put a 24-volt water snake trolling motor because that's what size it would fit in the opening in the floor of the kayak. It would go 3.6 or 3.7 miles an hour with the 24 volt. Then I took later and purchased this 45-pound thrust NuCanoe and put it on that same Hobie kayak, and then it would go 43 miles an hour. So it would go less than a mile an hour faster by going with a 45-pound thrust versus the 24-pound thrust. The only reason that I decided to do this is because you gain a very little bit of speed by going to the 45 over the 24, and you use a lot more battery. So I wanted my battery to last as long as possible, so I decided to go with a 45. And yes, Motor Guide makes a 55-pound thrust, but I decided to not get the 55-pound thrust for the same reason. It would give very little to no additional speed. It costs more, and it would use more battery, and I didn't need to do that. The good thing about this live scope mount pole that I have here, it comes in and out easy. You can take it out if you decide you want to run down the lake. I normally leave mine in here even going down the lake, but if you get ready to take it out, it comes out and in very simply. It's got a little latch here that latches it in, rotates easy. Also, with it being in between the Kayak mounts that I mount it on when I'm not using it, I have this mount here that comes with the Fisher mount, and I screwed it down in the middle of these. And as you can see, it's pushed over to the side, and that's because I run it going down the lake as fast as this kayak can go, which this kayak with this motor on here, the fastest I've seen it is 4.5 miles an hour. But as far as this will go, it can not go any further than there, and it stays in that position. And that's an awesome place to mount it. As you can see, my live scope pole, even without even holding on to it at higher speeds, still does great down in the water. It's always good to see what's going on as you're going down the lake, so I like to leave it in the water. Every time I take it up, I'm going to run a very long distance, and I'm not going to watch the live scope screen. Speaking of the trolling motor, getting back to it, the trolling motor, I have failed to mention this mount here comes for NuCanoe. When I bought this kayak, I got this mount here at the same time, and I have my control for the motor guide mounted on top of it with Velcro. It's not going to fall off by accident, but if it does, I've got it wrapped around my seat down here, and then I go up and I just click it on here. But that is a very convenient place when you're down here sitting. You can get to the controls very easy, and just love it. And while we're on the subject of the motor guide, I have two controls. I have one for when I'm sitting down, which I'll show you in a few minutes, and I have one mounted to my jacket here. When I'm fishing, I like to use this one. I don't have to bend down to get to that one. That is the one down there is very, very convenient when you're sitting down. It's handy to get to, so I really like that one. And that one down there, I've got a button on it for spot lock. This one up here does not have the spot lock button on it, and I don't want no spot lock button on it. Because if you have been in a fast speed going down the lake and you stop to fish and you decide that you want to hit spot lock, if you don't remember to turn your speed down when you do that, the boat will spin around quickly. And if you're standing up, it'll throw you out in the water, or very likely will throw you out in the water. So I don't want to be to where that I get thrown out in the water. So for that reason, this one here does not have a spot lock button on it. If I want to spot lock it, I'll sit down and put it on spot lock and then stand back up. I want to tell you about course lock while I'm fishing. Like I say, I'm not going to waste no time today. So course lock comes in handy when you know you're going across the lake or to another spot and you don't want to have to be bothered with the controls on the boat to get you in that position. Eat your sandwich or whatever going down the lake. You get started in the direction you want it to go and you mash course lock. Once you mash course lock, it will continue in the path that you have it going without you having to control it. I don't know why people has never talked about course lock before, but they only talk about spot lock. But course lock is awesome also. It's also good when you're fishing a real windy bank, for instance, and you're casting down the bank and you want to go in that same direction. You can stand up and fish just like I am right now. Of course, it's not real windy, and I'm on spot lock now. But you can get started in the direction you want to go, put it on course lock, and you can go right down that bank, casting your baits without being aggravated with controlling the boat. This is not only good for that, you can also, when you get it on course lock, it's got another button on this control here. It's cruise control. You know, you might ask, why would anybody want cruise control when you can set it on the speed you want to go and you're going to be going that speed? Well, if you cast it down the bank and you want to go a half a mile an hour, if you want to go 1 mile an hour, you hit cruise control while you got it on course lock, and you're going to go in that direction, you're going to go in that speed. Even if you're going against the wind. If it gets windy, the cruise control adjusts for the wind and it will continue at the speed that you set it on. Same thing if you're on the river fishing or someplace else that you got a lot of current, you put it on cruise control and you can take and go that same speed and fish with ease. And then when you do find that special spot and you want to stop, or if you want to stop, tie on a bait or something else, you just hit spot lock. Absolutely awesome trolling motor. And that again, that's a 45-pound thrust motor guide with GPS pinpoint. And while we're on the subject of standing up and getting thrown out into the lake, I don't know if you have thought about it yet, and I'm talking about people with kayaks, of course, but if you get thrown out in the lake and you've got your kayak going, it's not going to stop and wait on you. It's going to continue going. So what you need is a kill switch. And an easy way to make a kill switch, a good friend of mine came up with this idea. And what I'm going to do, and I haven't done it yet, but I'm going to take and do it in the next day or two, is I've already got Anderson connectors on my trolling motor. This is an Anderson connector, and I like it a lot. It's very dependable. And the good thing about an Anderson connector is if you want to make a safety switch for a kill switch, you can hook a cord to one side of this Anderson connector and fasten it on there tight and run the other end of that same cord up to your body, whether it be on your life jacket or whatever you're going to hook it onto. I'm going to hook mine on my life jacket. And if you happen to fall out in the water, when you fall out in the water, that cord's going to unplug it. It's really a very simple procedure, and everybody should have one if you're going to stand up and fish. And if you look around, you can see this T-track that runs down through here, and there's T-tracks up here on both sides, T-track for the seat to run down. This has got 273 inches of this T-track system on here. You can even, if you're looking for a kayak, you can get out and maybe take a friend with you or somebody, maybe a small friend. You can take this gear pod off the front up here. The only thing holds that gear pod on is 2 screws. There's one there, and it's in the T-track. It's in another T-track, and there's a screw on this side here. When you loosen up those 2 screws, that gear pod comes completely out. You can take that gear pod out, and this track that the seat I'm sitting in runs the full length down through here, and you can put another seat up here, especially if you got a grandkid or a child or a friend. You can put another seat up here, and you got plenty of room with that gear pod out, especially for 2 people to fish out of this. This kayak is 12 foot 5 inches long, and it's probably, as far as I can tell, the widest kayak on the market. It's 41 inches wide. It is a very stable kayak. And not only that, it is rated for 650 pounds. So you'll feel safe getting a small friend, or depending on how much gear and how much you weigh, another friend in the front of this, and another seat if you want to get out and fish with a friend. That's another reason to consider the NuCanoe kayak. So far, I've been very, very pleased with it. As you can see here, this pedal here is for foot steering. With foot steering, you can leave your hands free to fish and not have to bother with steering your kayak. This foot steering goes back to the rudder on the back. This is an option too, just like the foot steering is, but it's a rudder that mounts on the back, and it's got a cord, as you can see there. If you pull the cord, and the rudder comes up out of the water. But that rudder is what steers your kayak with the foot steering. And look on both sides of the kayak back there on the back. That's my paddle. What I did on that paddle is something I saw somebody else do on YouTube, where these Yak Attack mounts are put on the boat here. That was a rod holder, but rod holders that far back is not of very much use. So what I done was I took the rod holders off, and I took a piece of 1/4 inch black solid plastic, and I cut an exact pattern out of the bottom of the rod holders. So that way I was able to use the same screws that was holding the rod holders in to hold this down. So now I keep my paddles back there and out of the way. The kayak is designed with these handles here on the side to put your paddle in, which it does an awesome job too, but you just have your paddle run out down the side of your kayak, and it really wasn't much in the way. But the thing about it is, it's not in the way at all back there. So far, I've been loving that. Great idea that guy come up with. You know what people have always said, that I've heard them say after I had already bought my first kayak? If you can buy your second kayak first, it will save you a lot of money. And I found that out. I put a lot of money in my first kayak, and at that time I didn't realize a lot of things that I know now that I've been doing this for a while. And so I ended up getting a kayak I think I can keep for a very, very long time now. Of course, the reason why I wanted to get a Minn Kota GPS pinpoint is for the obvious reason that everybody talked about, which is spot lock. Spot lock is when you get out to your spot and it's just what it says. And you don't want to move, you want to fish without being interrupted, so you hit spot lock and it'll keep you in that position, even on strong windy days. The back compartment that you see here, both of these, by the way, are gear pods from Academy Sports. They are absolutely awesome. Let me show you inside this one here. For instance, in this one on the right, you got a tray that you can lift and take out like this, and you put other baits and things under it. Well, of course, you could use this same box to put any of your baits in, but what I done, I put a 50 amp lithium battery in here that I run my electronics off of. And then in the back one, and by the way, this right here is also got these pouches here on the back that you can put anything in. I got my wallet in it, I got a gun in it. You can put your sandwich in it. You can put baits in it. You can put anything. And that's a good place to put those. In this compartment, unlike a lot of other gear pods, they leak. This one here is 100% waterproof. It's got latches on the front of it. It's also got these same latches on the back side of this same box if you want to open it up from the back. And it's a whole lot cheaper than a lot of the other ones on the market. I had a Yak Attack on my Hobie, and I prefer this one over the Yak Attack 100%. And it costs a lot less, it's a lot bigger. And I also fasten this box on the top with baits that I'm going to use maybe during the day. Now, the same box in the back, it came from Academy Sports also. That box back there has only got a 100 amp lithium battery in it that I use for my trolling motor. And you'll notice on the very top of it, right there, that's where I plug my 360 white light on for the, for the stern of the boat that's required. I plug it in right there. And the reason why I put it there rather than move it back to the back is because it's easy to get to. So when I get ready to take it out, because it's gotten daylight, I can reach back there and pull it out and store it somewhere beside the boxes here. And it's a lot easier to get to than trying to get to it back there on the back. And also on the back side of that box there, I've got USB ports that I plug my GoPro into. As you can see, there's the Yak Attack Broomstick Pro pole for my GoPro camera. But anyway, I plug it in to the USB port on the back side of that box. I also got USB port on the back side of this box under there that I use for my charging my cell phone. Here beside my seat is an awesome place to take and lay the catch board. It's wide enough here that you got plenty of room to lay it, and there's no reason to try to mount it somewhere, because it's easy to take, get out and to use when you need to. And actually, now that I got it out, let me tell you about this. This is something that is absolutely awesome. This connector here is for my heated gear in the wintertime. There's a lot of people who will not fish in the winter because of obviously the cold temperatures. But with that connection and some heated gear, you can fish all day long in comfort. The only time you get cold is when you get out of your kayak and you get fixing to load your kayak. You don't get cold in your kayak. I've got a heated jacket. The brand name's First Gear. That's an awesome brand I've had for several years that I used on my Harley back when I was riding the Harley. Never have had any issues out of it, but it's a First Gear brand jacket. And also, I got First Gear brand heated socks. With the heated socks and the heated jacket, I can fish all day long and never have to worry about getting cold. If the reason why you don't fish in the winter times because you get cold, you get you some heated gear and you're not going to have no more issues. And of course, the heated gear I run off of my trolling motor battery. I can actually run, if I use my trolling motor a lot on high and it's on a real windy day, and you fish all day long, 8 or 9 hours, after about between 8 and 9 hours, the battery will die, the lithium battery will. So if you ain't gonna fish no longer than that, if you use your trolling motor a lot, a 100-amp battery on your trolling motor will serve for your trolling motor and for your heated gear in the winter time. Now, what I probably will do this winter, I'm gonna buy me another lithium battery, a small lithium battery, just to dedicate only to my heated gear, and I'll never have an issue with the battery dying out here while I'm trying to fish, because some days I fish more than 8 hours, even in the winter time. And here beside of that same heated gear connection is a battery monitor. Battery monitor is very helpful with a lithium battery because it'll show how much battery you've used during the day, and you're not surprised when it quits on you, because a lithium battery is unlike a regular car type battery or marine type battery. A lithium battery is, if you've never used one, you got the same power for all the time that you're using it until it gets down to the point where it's time for it to safely cut off, and at that time it instantly cuts off. Now, the good thing about it, what I've done on this setup is too, I don't think you can probably see it from here, but there is my Anderson connector for one of my batteries, which is for, well, I don't know if it's for the 50 amp or if it's for the 100 amp, but I've got both of them there side by side. You can't see it here, but there's where my trolling motor power plugs in at. I got an Anderson connector comes out that's inside the kayak. I hook it up to my 100 amp battery. During the day, if you're unfortunate and you do kill your battery, I just unplug it off my 100 amp battery, and I've got another Anderson connector coming off my 50 amp lithium battery that I use for only my electronics. But I can plug that same Anderson connector off my trolling motor that comes out there. I can plug that same one into my 50 amp, and I've got power to get me back to the boat ramp or to fish longer, whichever one I choose to do. I really don't like using anything off my electronics battery other than the electronics, but if you need to, you need to. Something else that I added to this kayak is this switch panel. This switch panel controls the lights on the boat. It controls my electronics. And speaking of the lights on my boat, I've got some LED lights on here that, I don't know, maybe even in the daytime you may see them. I'll turn the LED lights on and see how they do. Out here you can't tell because of the sun, but and I guess the way the camera's showing, you see some glow off that one is glowing down onto the bottom of the kayak. But I've got 8 of them in here. And I'll show you a picture later on in this video of how it looks at night. But I'm very visible at night, and hopefully some of these party boats won't run over me during the night. Also, on the front of it, I added strip lights for my stern lights. I'm sorry, my bow lights. Got the green one on that side, got the red one on that side. And it works awesome. I should not have any issue at night fishing out of this kayak. I think you will agree with me. Those green LED lights helped out a lot. I think in the mornings before it gets daylight, And of course, later on up in the summer, when it gets hot during the day and I start doing some night fishing, those lights there should help to keep those party boats from running over me out there. This also give me some light inside the boat, maybe see how to put on some baits. If not, I've always got a headlamp. This is how much those lights give off inside the garage when it was totally dark in here. It got a lot of glow. They're good LED lights, and also, if you don't want them this bright, it's got a dimmer switch on there. You can dim them down as low as you want them. I think it's gonna work out perfect for me. And a great place to lay your net, and when we talk about a net, now this is what you call a net. I got a huge net. I got one that, if I get ready to measure a fish, and I've had it happen when I got my catch board laying across the kayak, especially in that Hobie that I had. The Hobie was not as wide as this NuCanoe is, but I've had several fish to jump off the board before I get them measured and back out in the water, and I lost my fish. And since I've had this net, and of course I had another net before this one, but I've had fish to jump off the board, and when they jumped off the catch board, my measuring board, they jumped right off into the net, and I did not lose my fish. And I said I've had other nets besides this one. As you can see on this one, I got a pool, what do they call these things? Pool something other. But you know, pool stick, pool something then. But anyway, I put this on there. So if this one falls in the water, I'm not gonna lose this. And I've already lost 2 nets in the past year because knocking them out in the water and they sink like a rock. Well, talk about stuff sinking like a rock. These rod holders on the side here, these rod holders have been absolutely awesome. Love them there. They're convenient to get to while you're out fishing. And if you get do any river fishing around any bushes, you're gonna find out it's very handy to have your rods down there rather than standing up behind you to get caught in the bushes and either break your rods or jerk them out in the water. So, you know, I thought these were awesome ideals to have these, and they were. But my favorite rod, a very expensive rod too, was laying up here last week. And when I picked my net up, I knocked the rod out in the water. I thought my heart was gonna stop. I have about half as much in that rod as I do this kayak without the equipment on it. But anyway, when the rod hit in the water, I just knew it was gone. But to my surprise, that rod actually floated. Beat all I ever seen. It was about 2 inches under the water maybe, and I turned around and was able to get it back out. And I thought, you know, that ain't gonna happen to me again on some of these other rods. These other rods are not the same quality as the rod that got knocked out in the water, but I added these stretchy straps onto this, so now when I'm out here fishing, I got it under there so they're not gonna get knocked out in the water. That's not gonna happen again. But this is something else is awesome for you to think about, is the rod holders on the side. You'll love it. And of course, these mounts in T-tracks. And again, like I say, you know, there's plenty of T-tracks in this kayak. I mean, even in the back, anywhere you look, there's T-tracks. All the way back to the back there, on the back around them, around the paddles and all, is all back there. A NuCanoe, at least it's 2024. I don't know about the others, how much gear tracks that they've got in them. But these tracks here with 273 inches of tracks, you've got enough tracks that you can just add stuff anywhere that you want to add stuff. Now what I chose to do up here, see, they've even got gear tracks on top of this gear pod. But I chose to mount my locator, which is a 9-inch Elite FS, excuse me, a Lowrance locator, but I mounted it to the gear pod. And the reason for that is that, just like I mentioned earlier, if you loosen up these 2 bolts here, that whole gear pod lifts out, which means my locator is going to come out with it. Inside that gear pod, I've got all of the what some people calls the black box for my live scope. It's inside that gearbox. I can take this out. I can just lay it up on top of the gearbox. I've got my transducer mounted in the floor. I can loosen this nut up, drop it out if I choose to do so, which I probably will not. I'll probably just unscrew that transducer off the back of my locator and leave it in here. May throw a mat across it, and people who don't know boats, they're not gonna know you got anything in there worth stealing. But if I go somewhere and I'm gonna be there for the night, and I don't leave my expensive electronics out, by just taking out these two bolts, I lift that gear pod out. This will come out, that'll come out, only by removing two bolts. All the power wires that I have going into it up here, you can't see it from my net, but I can, well, net over some you can. The power wires are inside, other than the ones you see there, the red and the black one, that's actually on my trolling motor, and it comes off of the trolling motor. But the one in that black wire wrapping, or whatever you call it, there's a quick disconnect in there, and I can disconnect the wires going into this by just unplugging it, and I lift that gear pod off and out of the way, and you don't have to worry about somebody stealing your electronics. But that gear pod is an absolutely awesome thing to have. I considered getting a Hobie before I decided on this NuCanoe, but the gear pod was one thing that helped me decide on the NuCanoe over the Hobie. I want to be able to lift my electronics out without having to disconnect a lot of things. And that right there is 100% waterproof. You're not gonna get no water on none of your stuff. And of course, another reason why I got this kayak over a Hobie, not only the price, the Hobie's a whole lot more money, but this kayak right here has got everything that you could dream of to add your electronics and other equipment too. Plus, with it being 41 inches wide, it's wider than the Hobie PA14. I don't know if it's any more stable than the Hobie PA14. The Hobie PA14, I understand, and what I have read, is an absolute awesome kayak also, but you can't beat this one. But anyway, getting back to fishing now. My side scan transducer, which is here, and you can pull it up with this cord if you want it up out of the water. It pulls up into a cavity on the bottom of the boat. And also the line for the transducer I run in this drainage track here, out through here, and I put these small clips on it here to hold it in place. That way it keeps it off the floor. And speaking of the floor, this is very soft and padded. It makes it awesome for standing. Love that padded floor. Something else I like too is this Yak Attack rod holder here, because I turn it in different positions. In this position, I like to leave it in, out to the side. I put my rod here when I'm measuring a fish or maybe putting on a different bait, and it comes in very handy.